Again, as you can see, just going to shout out these links one more time. If you like my content, I do have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com @PhoenixGamingChris. And then militarygamingcommand.org. It's a nonprofit. They do a lot of good stuff with the veteran community and the Wounded Warrior community. And I don't mean the Wounded Warrior Project. I just mean, veterans that were injured and service members that were injured. So, and then like I said, Patreon, if you like the content, give me a subscribe on YouTube. That's free, and it still helps me get paid. Patreon, if you like it, you can support there. And then, you've got these awesome people like Frank here who throw me Twitch subs and stuff, which is super, super nice as well. So let's go to Best Coast Pairings. And let's pull up Death and Zeal. All right. And actually, man, I could actually overlay terrain, right? This could be neat. You guys want to go on an adventure? I like adventures. Let's go on an adventure. Let's pull this up. Boop. And I can actually close you out now. All right. So, let's pull up the list. We'll pull up mine. We'll pull up his. We've already talked about mine. We probably don't need to pull up mine. Play. My events. There we go. There we go. These are events that I am doing. And pairings. There I am. Look at that handsome guy. All right, so this is what we're working with. Let's see. Let's fix that. Boop. Let's uncrop so we can get that back. And confirm. Perfect. That should work better. Okay, so he's got an Arcs of Omen detachment. It is Adeptus Astartes Ultramarines. Save. I've had a coffee today, so I'm just running on gym hormones and showers. That's it. Arcs of Omen detachment. We've got the Imperium Adeptus Astartes Ultramarines. Obviously, it is an Arcs of Omen league. And then he is Ultramarines. He's not a successor chapter, which I think is a common trap for a lot of players. Is a lot of players I think get hung up on playing the successor chapters, and especially with some of the more common chapters, right? Like there's a lot of Space Wolf successor chapters out there, and well, I can get double exploding sixes. Well, sure you can, but you also lose access to army-wide heroic intervention, and I think that's an underrated ability and an underappreciated ability, right? And I don't know how good Space Wolf named characters are, but I'm sure they're fine. It's a power armor named character, so I'm sure they have a lot of good things. He did take elites as his compulsory unit type, which I fully expect, right? I don't know if problem is the word I'd use. I mean, I get what you're saying, but if successor chapters got named characters and everything else, then nobody would ever run the regular chapters, right? Like, as a company, Games Workshop has to do something to incentivize people to run these actual chapters for the most part. Yeah, but it's one unit instead of army wide. I assume you're talking about the heroic intervention, and then it also is what 6 inches for characters. Uh, yeah, and that one's kind of weird. But like, I would never personally run a White Scars successor chapter because the con is absolutely bonkers. He supports your army in such a good way if you position him well that he's just, to me, in my opinion, an auto include. Um, He's got a Chapter Master with a Master-crafted heavy bolt rifle. The Angel Artifice, which I don't know what that is. If you Marine people out there, and I'm going to flip off some of these lights so it's not so bright. And that's fair. That is a fair statement. Unfortunately, all our local Space Marine players stopped playing Space Marines because they were not good. Uh, so, Angel Artifice is +1 wound and +1 toughness. Is he? He's just, but he's just a regular boy. No, he's got it. So the heavy bolt rifle means he's in Gravis, right? So is that what that is? That's right. I wasn't throwing you in there because you're not super local. Okay, so if he's Gravis, that means he's going to go to T6 and like 7 wounds. That's pretty chunky, right? That's pretty chunky. So he might have to eat a Drazar, or he might have to eat a Succubus. Um, hey, nothing wrong with that, man. Chapter Command, Chapter Master, Master of the Codex, blah, 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 blah. Stratagem, Exemplar of the Chaplain. So he's got a... So he's got 2 Warlord traits and a Relic. Is that what I'm seeing here? Because, like... Sure. Each turn or like on his turn, I'll just pull it up. Let's just pull it up. Ultra, well, it's probably, is it Space Marines? Or are these Ultramarine specific? Master of the Codex. Uh, Master of the Codex Warlord trait. At the start of your command phase, if the Warlord is on the battlefield, roll d6. So it's in your command phase. No, but I get it. It's one of those where I'm not gonna dog the dude. He might have a plan for it, but I think as Ultramarines, you're better off taking Tiggy and then just taking the spell and then casting that spell and gaining a command point basically every turn, rather than having that 50-50 die roll. 2-up save and +1 wounds and toughness. So yeah, he's gonna be a chonker. He's gonna be having to eat like Drazar or maybe even the Archon. The Archon would actually be really funny because my Archon doesn't have anything but the Helm of Spite, uh, and then an Agonizer. Yes, I mean he's a Marine. It's unless you're in Jump Pack, that's just kind of how I see Marines, is they're just big old turtles. He does have a Lieutenant in Phobos armor with nothing, so that's an interesting pick. I'll have to dig through this list a bit more. Right, agreed. And I think we're gonna run into the issues that I've run into when I play against a lot of Marine players, is that they just can't keep up with the speed and my ability to usually position my units. Typically, if I lose a game, it's because I've misplayed and not positioned my units well. Like when I played Votan at the tournament, I kind of overextended. Like we were super tight until turn 4, right? That score was real close. And then turn 4, I overextended, and it was the poopy duty. And he's a good enough player that he punished me for it. Primaris Tech Marine, Chapter of the Master, or Chapter Command, Master of the Forge. Master of the Forge. Is that just like the upgraded dude? Yeah. Each time this model repairs a model, yeah. So it just gives him 3. Yep. I've got the same thing on my homunculus. Cool. That's not what I wanted. I wanted that one. Stratagem Warden of the Ancients. All right, which is While a friendly dreadnought is within 6 inches, add one to its strength and attacks characteristic. That's interesting. Yeah, I we're gonna have to see what his dreads are, because if it's just Redemptors, I feel like that's a waste. They're basically wounding almost everything in the game on twos anyway, so +1 strength isn't that great, and the +1 attacks is okay, right? So we got a squad of heavy intercessors, which with Ultramarines it makes sense, right? Like I can get behind this. A big old brick of heavy intercessors to probably just sit on the backfield. Yeah, I agree. Basically, I can't think of a reason to run it. I don't remember if dreadnought weapons are ×2, but I feel like a lot of them are. Like the venerable arms and the redemptor arms are all ×2, so having that +1 doesn't really do anything for you. So maybe if he's running like some weird stuff, like I don't know if they have an option like the Hellbrutes do, where it's like the Scourge is like strength +2, but Infiltrator squad. Intercessor squad. I have to imagine these are going to get combat squatted rather than staying into bricks of 10. Um, yeah, I agreed. Agreed. So this is curious. There's no assault intercessors, and that's not right or wrong. I just feel like they're cheap enough that you should include one in your list, even if it's just a 5-man. They're really good. Like for what they give you, like for their points, they're really good. They're worth to me. Um, and I'd probably run 2 of these and 1 of these, right? And we've talked about that. Like I am all about just spamming a lot of Phobos, forward deploying on as many objectives as I can, and then planting banners, and then just fighting over objectives and scoring points. It's to me the way Marines are probably going to get played competitively. I've only played 2 Marines lists at tournaments. It's about to go up. We'll see. Our elites, which is where he spent most of his stuff. Yeah, yeah. We've got a unit of aggressors, which it looks like, what is that, 3? Aggressor squad, 2 aggressors, and aggressor sergeant. Yeah, and actually, I mean, that's really just this whole game. And we were talking about that a little bit earlier while I was building, is 9th edition has really just like fast tracked into pick up models instantly, right? It doesn't matter what the army is. There's not a lot of armies out there where they're not just picking up whole units, right? It's definitely become a very just like killy game. Whether it's my army or your army, we're both going to be picking up a lot. I think aggressors are real good. They're basically like an auto take in almost every Marine list right now. They had a points drop. All their upgrades are free. It's a lot of dice, and these I have to be wary of, because all my infantry except for the grotesques, right? All my infantry's T3 except for my grotesques and my racks. So these things are gonna just like be poopy duty, and they're going to have to go away real quick, or they're going to have to get tied up with a boat. His fallback and shoot is going to be interesting. We'll get into that later. And he's only got 3 blade guard, which again, not right, not wrong. It's just interesting. I think blade guard are very good. Again, you have to be careful with them, but they are very good. We have an apothecary. So far this is looking like just like a standard Marine list. That's what I'm seeing so far. We do have some Vanguard vets. They are Chainsword and Storm Shield. And I did talk to this guy before, and I asked him why Chainswords instead of Lightning Claws, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's an interesting build, and I actually like it. And his reasoning was that the Lightning Claws were expensive, not expensive. They weren't free, right? Chainswords are free, exactly. And again, I like it. I don't know why we have the bolt pistol on the sergeant, and I assume it's because points. But you know what nope, we do. Okay. And then we have a shooty venerable dreadnought, which again is interesting. If it's free, yeah, plasma pistol. I don't know what the I don't know if those changed in points or if those became free upgrades or not. Um, that's interesting. So he has one melee dreadnought. So that Redemptor is going to go to strength 15, but it will get a bonus attack, which again, it's weird. I'm not putting the dude down. I think it's interesting. Definitely, as you guys have said, not the most efficient use of it, and that's okay. That is fine. We do have a Gladiator. These things are pretty solid. Let me see. That's the Reaper. I don't know what that one is. Gladiator. Oh, I can just do this. Whoop. Gladiator. That's a heavy support. I don't know that I've ever seen that one on the table. Oh no, it's T8. I'm gonna get screwed so bad. T8 and T9 really hurt Drukari. They don't have a ton that can interact with that unless it's like a great unclean one and it has the monster keyword. Dark Lances are wounding T8 on 4s, and I think I have to dig, but I think there's only one thing in the codex that actually doesn't wound T9 on 5s, and that's a oh shit. Now I need to look at this thing for real. Onslaught Gatling Cannon. Oh. Good lord. Okay, that's fair. 24 shots is, man, yeah, that's actually really cool. I'm surprised I don't see more of these. I'd have to assume that the +1 to hit is going to this Reaper, right? Like, this is really good. Yeah, because it doesn't get the +1 to hit with its, yeah. So fortunately, I do have a couple of transports, right? And I'm just going to charge it with the transports first, right? I do have a Tantalus in my list, and if it lives long enough, I'm just going to throw that charge roll from the Tantalus into this Reaper, and we're just going to see how that goes. It is only a 3+ save as opposed to a 2+ save, which means poison weapons will be able to chip wounds off of it with the potent malleotoxins. It's a strat that lets my poison weapons work on vehicles. So if I can shoot it with some Cabalites, for example, I can chip a lot of damage off of it. And all my Cabalites are Poison Tongue right now, so they wound everything on 3s. And I can even use that strat on a Venom, which are 2 damage attacks. So I can hit on 3s, wound on 3s, and then it's -1 for 2 damage, and I can just try to chip damage off of this thing. Fortunately, it's kind of slow. I don't know what these were, but 150 points is very good, right? Like, I assume that was a 20 to 30 point drop that these things got. Man, this is wow. I'd definitely be running my what you call it? Yeah. I'd be running my what does that dude do? He's not a tech priest, that's just what AdMech has. But he's the tech marine. I'd be putting my tech marine next to this thing the whole game. Predator Annihilator. Which one is that? It's the That's not. I have to look. Yeah. And honestly, there's a good chance I just don't interact with that thing at all, right? We're going to go over the terrain layout and the mission here in a little bit, and we'll talk about that. What does this have built in? Is this the twin las cannon one? Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. These are fine. Like, I know what these do. I'm not super worried about those. Oh. And then the impulsor. So I have to imagine that's where the blade guard are going. So the only thing that really I'm looking at and I don't necessarily understand is the Phobos lieutenant, right? He just kind of sticks out to me. And maybe it's just because he's a cheap lieutenant, and it may just be like that's the model he has, and he wanted a lieutenant, so that's what he's using. I don't know. I know he's got like Marnius Calgar and stuff like this. Like I said, I've talked to this guy before. Super nice dude. But yeah, no, it's just this is the standout to me is the Phobos lieutenant, and I don't know if it's because that's what model he has, or if that's he's got some sort of devious plan that I don't know about. So we'll see. We will see when I meet up with him this week. We'll see. I'll talk to him about it. So the mission, right, is Death and Zeal. Did I still have that up? Nope. So let's pull that up. Boop, boop, boop. And this is really cool. This league is ITC points. Like these are like competitive players. Like this is going to be a good league. Like this is all for ITC points and BCP ranking and stuff like that. All right, so gain a command point, blah, 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 blah. In this mission, if a player controls an objective marker at the end of the command phase and one or more of their units that are within range of an... So it has sticky objectives for OBSEC. Cool. No, I think because if I remember right, you're bringing a lot of boys, and I think that's going to throw some people off, right? Because a lot of people don't think anything of boys, and we've talked about it. I don't like where they're at right now, but I think there's ways to play them in a competitive environment. And I think what you're doing is a good way to do it. So this does have sticky objectives, which means that his sticky objectives are less important. And it also means that I can take banners and I don't have to stay on objectives. Yeah, for sure. Get the extra experience, absolutely. So I'm already considering, because his army is generally slower, I'm already thinking I'm taking banners. I already think I'm going to take Herd the Prey, and I'll have to think on the third one. We know what banners is. Herd the Prey is a Drukhari specific one. I get 1 victory point for every table quarter you're not wholly within. And I think all I do is I just pick 1 table quarter plus my deployment zone, and I just focus on that, and I just try to keep them out of those to start with. We'll kind of go over that in a little bit. And then this is obviously a 4 for 1, 4 for 2, 4 for more. And then at the end of each player's turn, the player whose turn it is scores 2 victory points if they satisfy one of the conditions, or 3 if they satisfy both. If you get 2 points if you control every objective marker, or you control a marker you didn't control at the start of your turn. And then you get 2 victory points if you destroy an enemy unit within range of an objective marker at the start of the turn. So, and then here's our deployment zone. And I'll kind of jump back over to the picture we made earlier. Bam. So this is basically going to be our table layout, right? This is our board. These right here, this black line, I don't know if you can see my cursor, is a 2-story ruin, and then it's first floor blocking. All the blue footprints are first floor blocking. All the gray footprints are not, but they're all obscuring ruins, right? And then the green footprints are woods, and then the red are just, they're double stacked armor containers, or they're armor containers. It just depends on what's on the table. Thanks. If you're touched into the footprint, you have true line of sight. There are windows in those features. If you're not in the footprint, so like, again, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Oh, you know what? I can do this. I have draw mode. So if you're here and I'm here, we can't shoot because it's obscuring, right? But if I touch in, there are windows here, so now I can shoot here. I'll have line of sight because these are intended to have windows and stuff in them. Correct. The blue, these, give me a second. So the blue one, here is the actual feature. It's this black line. All right. And Frank, you've played on this table actually. So this should look familiar. These have no windows or doors at all. And then they are roughly 5 inches tall. There's like a peak that's higher, here at the corner, they are breachable, but there's no windows or doors. So, but all this back, yep, all this back area is open. And then I guess I got some ads coming in, so we'll kind of go over that in a minute. And then these are just, again, solid walls. And I actually have, I might have a physical picture. Let's not do that. Let's bring it over here. See if I've got a physical picture of what this table would look like. Because I did take some pictures. Because this is one of the layouts we use at tournaments. And there's a group of us that are kind of like collaborating and getting a lot of okay. Is that really the only picture in there? View all albums. It is. All right. So photos. Ah, here we go. I do have one because I took some pictures at the tournament. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Boop. There we go. All right. So blue. Here we go. Here's a picture, actually. That's what while you guys were dealing with ads and stuff. So this big footprint, let me grab my little handy dandy drawing tool. So this is one of those blue footprints right here. So this lets you know what it is. And then this is what the gray one right here would look like. Okay. So we've got these windows here, but these don't have it and these don't have it. Does that, I think that seeing it physically, I assume helps kind of clear that up. Does that make a lot more sense now? No, they still can. There's still ruins. So infantry can still cross through here. Vehicles just have to go around because there's still ruins, right? The doors and windows are superfluous to the breachable keyword. It's the being ruins that gives it the breachable keyword. The doors and windows are just what let you have line of sight and see and shoot. So, so all your infantry and stuff can actually pass through here too. Even though this is a solid wall. If you look where I just drew, right, this comes down, but this one also comes down. So you can still breachable through here. And then this still counts as ruins here. So you can still breachable through there also. And then you can breachable through there also. So it's one of those where, so all the terrain features are just like a bucket that hold a bunch of keywords. And then the physical terrain feature itself doesn't necessarily affect the keywords. I cannot tell you that one. Because that would have been probably an 8th edition table because that was before they did like the obscuring keyword and stuff like that. Oh man, I love it when you talk dirty to me. Right, so on the blue feature, right? If I'm standing right here and you're standing right here, we don't have line of sight. So we cannot shoot each other. But if you're right here and I'm right here, we do have line of sight, so we can shoot each other, right? But there's a little thing right up here. I don't know if you can see my little drawing here. Let me use a different color other than black so it stands out better. So there's a spot right here. See how I'm not on the footprint? And then here, you're not on the footprint. The whole footprint blocks line of sight, so we cannot shoot each other because of the obscuring keyword. This isn't an ITC layout, and you don't have to use like FLG or LVO layouts or even GW layouts to get ITC points. You just have to be an ITC approved tournament organizer, right? Um, And what it does is it helps melee armies be able to actually play the game, because if we didn't have stuff like that, shooting armies would dominate more than they do already, right? Because for the last year, right, most of the armies that have really dominated have been shoot first armies. There's a few exceptions, but even like a lot of the Harlequins builds had a lot of guns. So, boop, there we go. So that big footprint with the blue feature is this, and then the one with the windows are these gray ones. So this is our center objective here, and then deployment zones. Let's mark deployment zones in red. Let's not do red. We have red. Let's do that. So, and this is again just an approximation. Deployment zones are going to be roughly like this, and then we've got like our little 9-inch bubble here, right? So that's what our deployment zones are going to look like. So I already know his army's slow. And again, it's not perfect, but it gets the point across. Because his army's slow, right, I'm going to take banners. And why am I going to take banners? Because I can turn one, drop a banner here, and I can start priming for here, right? Well, really it's here. Let's undo. So I can stage maybe a unit of racks here, or I've got a venom I can put here. And then turn 2, I can bounce my venom over, or I can advance my racks. I don't have to control this right away, and I'm probably not going to. I don't think I put mandrakes in my list, and that's fine. I don't need them. I've got scourges. I can deep strike my scourges. Also, so turn 1, I'm only probably having one banner, and that's okay. He will, and I'm actually banking on that, right? And I'm hopeful that he forward deploys on an objective because it gives me a charge. That's my hope. That's fair. That's fair. So my hope is he throws him here, right? If he throws him here, that's not as good for me. Right. The infiltrators do have a 12-inch deny, and so it will be a lot harder for me to get where I need to if he positions those infiltrators well, which is why I think he should have had 2 units of infiltrators and 1 unit of intercessors, because that makes screening really hard. But if that's the case, I can always just put the scourges on the table. They do move 14 inches and fly, so it's one of those where I do have that ability as well. But I'm hopeful he puts them here, because if I end up going first and he puts them there, I'm just tagging them. I'm charging them with racks. I'll probably kind of focus them down with a venom, and that's probably where we're at, right? He doesn't have a ton of scary infantry. Like, his infantry's good, don't get me wrong. I'm not dogging on Marines, but he's got a unit of Blade Guard and he's got a unit of Vanguards. Outside of that, it's mostly shooty boys. So I'm going to be able to position a lot of my units in this wall. And then as soon as he gets within range, jump out. Because I'm going to have army-wide advance and charge starting turn 2. So I think the units that are going right there is probably going to be my grotesques. Because the grotesques, when I have a homunculus next to them, are T6. The Coven that I'm taking makes them strength 6, and their hit rolls of 6 explode in the fight phase. So a unit of 5 grotesques is going to throw 25 dice. I'll have them hitting on 3s, re-rolling once, 6s explode, strength 6, neg 2, 2 damage, wound rolls of 6 or neg 3. So they will make relatively quick work of whatever they touch, right? And then their 4 wounds with a 6-up invul and then a 5-up feel no pain, they do still kind of go away when a lot of things hit them, but it usually takes an overcommitment. You can't just commit a little bit into grotesques. You have to commit a lot. Yeah. But this is where my mobility is going to be very key. Excuse me. My Tantalus is got to go in strategic reserves, I think. He's got enough las cannons and other things that he's going to be able to shoot it off the table before I even get to move it. So the Tantalus is going in strategic reserves. But what's interesting is if he's in my deployment zone, or if it comes out in my deployment zone, sorry, I can put it anywhere in my deployment zone as long as it's within an inch of my table edge. So even if he's here, I can be here, and it can be within 9 inches as long as the Tantalus is within an inch of my table edge. So I can bring it out, I can still shoot, I can still charge, and I'll be able to just like hammer into people with it. And that's one of those where this is where the Tantalus is going to be interesting because it's going to force him to really think about where he's going to position things. It's not inherently terrifying, but when it shoots, it does throw 12 dice, and they are strength 8, neg 3, 2 damage. And then in melee, it will throw 6 dice, strength 8, neg 2, 2 damage, and 6s will explode. And then the other thing to consider is that Tantalus has 10 Trueborn in it, so it's just got 20 shots that are going to be hitting on 2s, wounding all infantry on 3s. There's no rend, but it's just a lot of dice. And then there's a couple of, like 2 blasters in there. Yeah, and usually when we have those, we have to just kind of like separate and rearrange stuff. Like these kind of get opened up here a little bit more. And, like this is open, so they can still move through this. So a lot of times we just move the armor containers and stuff like that. We definitely, like all the events up here, we definitely kind of do what we can to help accommodate units that have like big bases or big models. Like I've got a buddy who's played Stampas on this layout, and it's been fine. We just have to accommodate them by giving them some sort of like special rule, like they just subtract 2 inches from their movement when moving over most of these features, or we just push the features out a little bit. It's one of those where that conversation happens with the players before they do their game, and whatever solution we can come up with that makes both players happy, that's what we go with. So yeah, I can, and I might just take behind enemy lines. That actually wouldn't be a bad one, but I think Herd the Prey is better. The deployment zone's real big, and he's gonna have a hard time keeping me out of it once I get going, right? My first turn is usually pretty low key. My first turn is going to be spent staging Blood Brides probably here. And then, it's here. Grotesques with the Homunculus. And probably the Archon's going to be hanging out here. And then the Succubus will be chilling. And then I think this is the quarter I'm going to try to take. And then I'll let him have this one. And I think my general game plan is to try to put something over here to bait him, and then use my mobility to bounce back, bounce up, and then come around. And then his army's slow enough that I think he's going to have a hard time keeping up. I do have a Ravager. Maybe? No, I don't. I have Talos. This time. And they've got Heat Lances. So, but I can fire and fade with units. So that may be also what happens is my Scourges, like if he, because they've got the Haywire, if he's got like that Gladiator here, for example, I may just pop Scourges out, shoot the Gladiator, fire and fade. So it's one of those where I've got a general game plan. I think Banners is the take. Let's look, actually, before we commit to that. Let's clear this out. Go up to the top. Secondary objectives. Boop, boop. Drukari. All right. So Beast for the arenas is gone. Oh, because we're in, I'm probably in Nephilim. That's okay. All the Drukari secondary stayed the same. They just lost Beast for the arenas. Take Them Alive is basically an auto take for me. I get a victory point. Yeah, he's Ultramarines. I get a victory point for every character or monster. No, I get a victory point for every unit that is destroyed in melee, and I get 3 if it's a character or monster, right? So He's got the lieutenant, a chapter master, a tech marine, and he's got an apothecary. So he's got 4 characters. So already is an auto take. Because even if I only kill 2 of them in melee, that's 6 victory points. And I should be able to kill enough of his other units in melee that I score a good 10, 12. Sometimes I take assassinate instead, but usually it's take them alive. Fear and terror. I get a victory point if he fails a morale check. I get a victory point if he falls back, and I get a victory point if he fails an action. And then if a unit dies in melee, I roll 2 dice, and if it's greater than their leadership, I get a victory point. So that one's not very good. Like, you really have to spec into it, and I am not. Like, I would want to take the homunculus coven that gives a leadership debuff so that, like, I can have, like, neg 3, neg 4 leadership auras all over the board. I don't have that, so I don't think I take that. I would get a victory point every time he falls back to shoot me, and then if he uses the Ultramarine strat that lets him shoot and charge, obviously I'd still get a victory point there. So it's one of those where there's utility there, but I don't know if there's enough utility there to justify making my secondary that. Plus, they get bonus leadership because they're Ultramarines, so I think this is just a avoided at all costs, right? Obviously, we're not taking any of those. Behind enemy lines, engage all fronts, herd the prey. So I'm either taking behind enemy lines or herd the prey. I'll probably make that decision when we get closer to the game. Herd the prey. I think I've only had 1 or 2 games where I haven't scored at least 8 to 10 points on it. So I think that's probably where we go. I haven't run behind enemy lines enough to be comfortable with it. And maybe this is a game where I do that, right? And then I can raise the banners or RBD, RND, ROD, whatever you want to call it. So before I make that decision, what do we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 10, 25, 35, 40, 60, 80, 90, 105 wounds, it looks like, for no prisoners, which means I could get 12 points on no prisoners. So that might be what I do too, because again, then I'm just getting points for playing the game. And 12 if I kill them all and get 12 points, I'm happy, right? Like that's not a bad go. So there's a good chance those are my secondaries. No prisoners, herd the prey, and then take them alive. And the nice part about take them alive and no prisoners is that if I'm killing things in melee, I'm doubling up. I'm getting points, two secondaries for doing one thing, which is, again, kind of, especially when you go to comp games, you really want to kind of figure out how you can. Yeah, and that's super fair, Dan. If I kill them all, I do probably win. I think I can. I think I can do it. If I can keep my grotesques safe and get them into at least 2 different units, I think this game is going to be over real quick. Like, they were definitely obviously, John, I played a good real funny game with John the other day. We both played for the wrong secondaries for a good solid turn, and then it just became like, oh, so then we both had to, like, fix our mistakes by, like, playing better. Like, the first turn was just dumb. And then from then on, it was just like a tightrope walk for both of us because of that. And like, my grotesques, they did a lot of work that game. They killed so many mega knobs, and they were able to tank a lot of the mega knob fighting because of the feel no pain, because of the invuln, and the fact that he wasn't wounding them on 2s. So there were some good utility that I got out of them. And if I can get that kind of utility out of them this game, where this guy doesn't have a Terminator Mega Knob type unit, it's just going to be better for me. And I think the grotesques are going to be the linchpin of this game, the key unit. Obviously, Drazar and the Incubi are always good, but I think my use of the grotesques are going to be what's important. But yeah, I think that's the secondaries I kind of plan for. I think I plan for Herd the Prey. I think I plan for Take Them Alive, and I think I plan for No Prisoners. And then, yeah, I think that is the overall game plan, like I said, is to effectively use something to bait him here, and then try to sweep around. And obviously, the game plan could change based on what secondaries he takes. I know the Ultramarine secondary is actually pretty good. I don't remember what it is. Let's look. Ultramarines. Oh, I guess I can get rid of my little doodle. Obviously, Codex Warfare is okay. And I don't know if he's set up for it. I've only played against one player that's used Codex Warfare, and it was an Iron Hands list. And turns out, man, like my theories on that were pretty accurate, at least based on my games. And that was basically you can stay in Devastator Doctrine all you want to. I'm coming to you, and I'm gonna get there eventually. You're not gonna kill everything before I get there. Gotcha. Yeah, and I think it's one that you have to plan around. Maybe. Maybe. I don't have a way to ignore invulnerable saves with this army, so I'll just have to spam him with poison weapons and hope he fails enough saves. Uh, no, I was talking about the Codex Warfare secondary. O's a moment. So I think he's gonna take O's because there's an objective in the middle, and I don't think that's a bad play. Uh if he caps Codex Warfare, then I'm not in a good spot, right? Because if he's killing enough of my units that he's scoring that many points on Codex Warfare, I'm in a bad spot. I'm in a real bad spot. I'm not trading well. I do think O's a moment is what he's taking. Like I said, I'm just guessing because there's an objective in the middle. Right, but if he kills 5 of my units with heavy weapons, I'm in trouble. Even if he stays in the Devastator Doctrine, right? If he still has the ability to just delete units and I'm not hiding my units well enough in the terrain and he's just like mulching them with his heavy weapons, I am in a lot of trouble, friend. And it's one of those where I get it, and I'll have to look. Not as many as I would like, but I am traditionally an orc player, so I'm used to having a lot. So when I have less, it feels weird. But we'll look at that in a minute. I don't remember off the top of my head. With an objective in the middle and O's going back to what 2 points for controlling the middle of the board, if I remember right. It just seems like a no-brainer. He's probably going to lose points on the fallback because of his chapter tactic being fallback and shoot, but that's okay. I have enough monsters and vehicles that he'll be able to get that as well, because like the Talos are monsters. I've got a Raider. I've got Venoms. I've got things that it'll matter, right? And then I think shock tactics to me is an auto take for Marine players. It went to 4 points. It's not an easy objective to score, but if you have some of that finesse and you have some of that like forethought, uh, you should be able to get 12 points on that most games, right? Again, it's not the easiest thing, but it is doable. And then we march from a crag. One or more Ultramarines core infantry units can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase. Each unit from your army that starts to perform this action must be within range of a different objective marker you control that is not within your deployment zone and has not been claimed for Macragge by your army. It's completed in your command phase or at the end of the battle, whichever comes first, and then you score 4 victory points if your army completes it. So this might not be the best mission for it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So he could cap it, right? And honestly, it might not be a bad mission for it. I think he doesn't have the requisite number of infiltrators to make it worth. Because I think, yeah, and that was going to be the follow-on. Because if he had 2 units of infiltrators or 3 units of infiltrators, like he could maybe hide one. I'd have to see what the spacing is, but he might be able to like hide one here or peg one in here and do it turn 1 and then have a second unit bubble screaming. There are better missions for it. I don't think that this is the best one, but it's not a terrible one. But I agree with you 100%. I think if he does that, he's got to deep strike his Vanguard vets, like, and just kind of rely on being able to position them later in the game to do it, and hope that he's got enough units at the end of the game to be able to do it as well. So this is probably not the best mission. I think we're going to see oaths. We might see some codex warfare, and then banners. I think banners. I think banners is effectively like a auto take for a lot of Marines right now because of the extra bodies that they're getting and the ability to forward deploy. And again, I've said it probably 100 times. Like if I were going to build a Marine list right now, I would 100% bring like 3 Phobos troops that can forward deploy, and then I would bring the Warlord trait that lets you redeploy Phobos units, and then I would just like in this mission, I'd plant one here, I'd plant one here, and I'd plant one here. And then if I go first, it's banner, banner, banner. And then I'd probably take shock tactics. And then I'd probably just be like, okay, you kill my unit off the objective, you steal the objective, you take the banner. But now I'm going to just take it back and get 4 points, right? Like that's probably how I would approach that, honestly. And I might have like a 4th unit that forward deploys for a mission like this that can kind of camp here for a counter charge, or maybe even like back here for a counter charge, just so you can just like go in, take the objective back, and be like, cool, this is mine. I'm getting 4 points. I'm replanting my banner. Or I'm going in, I'm getting 4 points, and I'm killing your units. So it's one of those where I haven't seen that list yet. I have seen people do banners knowing that they're sticky, but not the I'm going to forward deploy on all the no man's land objectives. And maybe, like I said, maybe it's not great. I just, in my head, it's like, this seems like a very good way to play, but it's also not necessarily the most straightforward. Like it requires some forethought and some planning. And I'm not knocking people, but I know like a lot of people don't want to approach the game that way, right? A lot of people just want it to be a little easier. And again, I'm not putting anybody down. Not everybody has to do everything the hardest way possible. I'm just an idiot. So, we were talking about that actually not that long ago. My team and I were having like a little group chat, and I was like, man, I did really badly at this tournament, and I just like wasn't feeling real good about it. And a couple of them were like, bro, you're running a Tantalus, and you're running like the dumbest shit possible. Like, I don't know anybody that goes into tournaments and handicaps themselves the way you do. The fact that you even won a game is impressive. And I was like, yeah, all right, that's fair. Thanks. Thanks for the pick me up, guys. I appreciate it. Um, and I'm still running the dumb shit this weekend. So, uh, So yeah, you had asked how many units I had. Sorry, I do get on tangents, as you all know, and we've got a lot of viewers today. So before we jump into the list, I do want to just one more time talk about my pinned links here. Um, obviously, Patreon's pretty self-explanatory. If you like what you see here, or you like what I do on my YouTube channel, um, if you want to subscribe on Patreon, I appreciate it. You'll get some swag depending on what tier you support at. Yeah, it's so I'll get to that in a second. Obviously some of you have subbed on Twitch, and I appreciate that. My YouTube channel is linked also at the top. It should be pinned. So if you've got questions about that, feel free to ask. Throw a sub on YouTube. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can mute the notifications if you don't like it. That's fine. Like, I'm not going to be upset by it. I do content on YouTube that doesn't hit Twitch, obviously. So there's a lot of stuff on there. I've probably gotten 100 videos up in the last 6 months. And that's to include the Twitch stuff that does export over. Now, in addition to that, the most important one is the Military Gaming Command. So if you've been here for a bit, you've heard me say it already. They are a nonprofit organization. What they do is they work with veterans and service members who are injured, and they use gaming, and they've built a gaming community. I'm working with them. I am actually spearheading and captaining a team for them for 40K. So I'm going to be going to events, not just with my team, but with this team as well. And it's a team comprised of all veterans, and we're going to be just kind of spreading their word and help supporting the cause and stuff like that. So just if you want to know more, click the links. Wanted to kind of do a brief, and I'm not paid to do any of this, guys. Like, they're not paying me. They're not paying me to sit here and kind of advertise for them. I am just, like I said, spearheading their 40K team to help them reach the tabletop community as well. Right now, their primary focus is video games, and I'm helping them reach the tabletop community. So, sorry for the digression. Let's jump back over here. We can close that one out. Bam, bam. All right. Yeah, there we go. Let's get these pairings. uh, everybody plays, man. So fun equals not dumb. I wanted to address that actually before we dive into my list and look at how many units I've got. So I did the math, right? And because of my history, I used to run a game store, right? And I was a community first owner. My opinion was always, if I build a good community, the sales will follow. And so I was constantly playing with customers, people coming in and out of the store. In the last year, I've played close to 1,000 games of 40K, right? A big part of why I take dumb and silly things is because I want my opponent to have fun also. When I've played as many games as I have, like, I'm just going to have a a better understanding of what's going on the table. And again, not to put anybody down. It's just, man, like some guys at tournaments, they just come out and they're just like rolling dice on a weekend, and they're just wanting to have fun and a good time and get out and hang out with the bros. Some of them are sweaty tournament players, and some of them are just clowns, and that's all fine. Like, the community has room for everybody. But the one thing that I have learned, right, is when I start dipping into what would consider or be considered like the meta, because of the amount of time I've put into this game, it tends to not be fun, right? It's not fun for my opponent. I love AdMech, right? I do. I'm actually building them right now, but I don't love them for their rules, right? I love them for their aesthetic, genuinely. When I first got back into 40K, my mind was teetering between AdMech and Orcs. I was like, dude, do I want these big ass Protectron Fallout rip-off robots? Or do I just want a bunch of crackheads on motorcycles and buggies? And obviously, the crackheads won out. So now I'm at a point where I'm slowly building some AdMech. I love the army, but yeah, no, AdMech is bonkers good. Yeah, yep. They're bonkers good, but they are an extremely hard army to play, right? But when you understand how to layer their rules, they are absurdly strong. And because of who I am as a person, I would play a very melee-centric form of AdMech. So I'm playing like Riza for the +1 to wound. It's silly, but again, the big digressions. And yeah, they do. They just look like Protectrons, man. That was the first thing my brain thought of when I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, those are Protectrons. So I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, Frank. I play everything like orcs. But so like with the Castellans, for example, I'm gonna give them one fist, and then I'm gonna give them two shooters, right? Because one of them is strength 6 neg 2 1 damage for 3 shots, and one of them is strength 6 neg 1 and 2 damage for 3 shots. But then as I'm moving them into melee, I've got 6 dice that I'm throwing, and I think I've actually had this talk already, right? Like 6 dice that I'm throwing every shooting phase. And then I still get my bonus attack in the fight phase. By not taking 2 fists, I sacrifice 1 melee attack, but I gain 3 shooting attacks, and I can just keep interacting more and more. And that's where the AdMech list is so good. I'm about it, man. I'm about it. If you're local, we could do this for sure. Oh yeah. I I don't know why my brain wasn't putting it together that you're Alan, man. Yeah, for sure, man. I'll play your AdMech anytime, anyway, man. Again, like I see weird things and stuff. Like it's not necessarily good things or bad things. I just kind of approach the game a little weird. So, it is an Arcs of Omen detachment. My cult is Cursed Blade. I did not change that. I love them. The wound roll or the saving throws of 6 doing a mortal wound back to your opponent in the fight phase is honestly one of my favorite mechanics. I know I don't like mortal wounds, and I've said that 100 times, but this is one of those instances where it's like it doesn't happen often, but man, when it does, it just goes off, right? Um, a good case, a good example is that I was playing our local one of the craft world player on my team, Austin. We were playing a game, and he was like, "I'm charging your succubus and your Hecatrix blood brides with my scorpions." So he just slammed his melee unit into my melee unit, right? All mine have a 4-up invuln, but only in melee. In shooting, they just die. They just evaporate. So he puts his sergeant, who gets like, I don't know, 15 attacks, because they're basically characters with a squad, is basically how it works out. So he puts his sergeant, which is called an Exarch. He puts the Exarch into my succubus, and then everything else into the blood brides. Man, he shit the bed. Like, whiffed his dice, and I managed to spike some saves, right? And when it was all said and done, he killed 3 of my blood brides and did 2 damage to my succubus, and then I killed 5 of his scorpions just from my saving throws. And he was just like, ugh. So it's one of those where it's not an inherently terrifying or dangerous ability, but it's one that you have to account for, because if it does go off like that, like it can be devastating. And anything that lets me interact with you while you're trying to do something is inherently better than not being able to. So I did switch my Cabal to Poison Tongue, so all my poison weapons get +1 to their wound or poison ability. So it's basically everything's poison 3. I automatically wound all non-vehicle, non-titanic on 3. Um, Honestly, that's been a nice change. Like that's been a good change. Not like game breaking, because most of it has 0 AP and 1 damage. There are a handful of other weapons, but what's interesting here is that it does affect my melee weapons. So like my Archon has an Agonizer, and even though he's strength 3, he just wounds most of the game on 3s. And they're minus 3 AP for 1 damage. And then I have a custom Coven, and it gives me experimental creations and splinter blades. Experimental creations, I get to add 1 to the strength of all of my homunculus Coven units, and then splinter blades, my 6s explode in the fight phase. So it's fun. I have the Archon. He doesn't really have a lot. He does have the Helm of Spite, which just gives me a deny, and then if I do deny you, you suffer perils. It's one of those where I did the tournament without it, and I'm kind of sad that I did that, because it would have been relevant every game. So, Homunculus, he's got the Alliance of Agony Warlord trait, and he just got the Warlord trait that lets him heal 3 wounds instead of a D3. He's nothing special. And then the Succubus. So this is one of my big damage dealers, right? Because she has precision blows and she has the triptych whip, so she fires like 10 attacks in the fight phase, hitting on 2s. Her hit rolls of 6 are 2 mortal wounds, and then the attack sequence ends. And then her weapon is poison 2, minus 3, 2 damage. So it's going to be 5 up or die for most marine infantry, and I just wound them all on 2s. A brick at 10, Blood Brides. They just have weapon skill 2 and a better leadership. They're just witches though. And then Trueborn. Obviously they got the splinter rifles, and then we've got what do we got? We got 2 blasters and a dark lance. That's it. And then a 6-man of Cabalites. 5 of them with splinter rifles, 1 with a blaster, and then 2 units of 5 racks. So it's nothing crazy. Grotesques. I'm going to just pull this data sheet up, right? And these guys are out of print, so I had to actually kit bash some. So they move 7 inches, which is one thing I do like. They're still fast, right? And they're only 35 points. Their weapon skill is 3, strength 5, T5, 4 wounds, 4 attacks, 8 leadership, 6 up save. They get power from pain, so they get the 6 up invuln, which is right here. They get insensible to pain, which is a 5 up feel no pain. And then Blade Artist, which is wounds of 6 are an additional AP. They have this is their melee profile. So it's strength 5, neg 2, 2 damage, and it gets a bonus attack. They have the flesh gauntlet also, and I might consider using that if I were playing, I don't know. I get to use either one. So really, there's times where I would use that. It's just there's no AP and it's 1 damage. So into Marines, I'm probably just using the cleaver. Now, if I'm fighting into like 1 wound infantry, like orcs, I might use the other one. Especially because there's a strat that just lets me reroll wounds and I can just fish for 6s, which do immortal in addition to. Right? So then my Coven makes them strength 6 and 6s explode. So 5 attacks times 5 grotesques, 25 dice, hitting on 3s. The Archon gives them rerolling 1s because it's a space raid, so they're pretty good, right? I got 5 Incubi and Drazar. There he is. He's a handsome boy. I do have 5 Hellions. I'm mixed on the Hellions. I like them in 10-man squads. Their footprint's kind of big, but man, they just swing so many dice. In 5-man squads, I feel like they underperform a little bit. It is what it is. Scourges, we've got 4 Scourges with the Haywire Blaster, and then the Sergeant just has a poison weapon. It's nothing special. Talos. So the Talos being in this Coven is really good because it moves them from Strength 7 to Strength 8 with the Macro Scalpel. And then they have 2 Heat Lances each. They are Ballistic Skill 4, so they're not extremely accurate. And that is one thing that this army does struggle into, specifically Drukhari, not even just my list, is just anything that's a lot of T8, or even like my buddy's got 3 Chaos Land Raiders in his Night Lords list, and I just can't interact with the T9 very well. Like the Haywire does okay, but because they're heavy weapons, they just hit on 4s and wound on 4s. So it's one of those where it does struggle into like T8 and T9 armies, right? And then the old Tantalusy, and that thing's just silly. Like I said, it's definitely like it's not that it's bad. It's situationally good. It's just it's so easy for it to die before I really get to do anything with it. We do have one Raider and 2 Venoms. The Raider is Witch Cult. The Tantalus is Witch Cult or Homunculus Coven. Because you just pick, and I've been playing it as Homunculus Coven, so it'll be Homunculus Coven. And then the Venoms are Poison Tongue because they have 2 Splinter Cannons, so they just wound on 3s for 2 damage. And that's it, man. That's my list. So like I said, if I'm losing 5 units, I'm in a bad spot. Like I don't have a lot. I've got 4 characters, and that's a thing to keep in mind is that with 4 characters, man, like, and this is not typically the way I would play. I tend to play character light, which is another reason why AdMech is such a foreign army for me because that is not a character light army. So, but yeah, that's it. You know, and like I said, like it's very good. I've had good success with it. It's been fun. It's been an enjoyable list to say the least. And so we'll see. We'll see. It's a big change from my Highlander list. My Highlander list was not a space raid. I did not have racks in it. I don't think. I think it was just Cabalites and Witches, and I struggled into my ears itch so bad from these headphones. I struggled into I don't know. My brain just stopped. So, but yeah, I think that's where we're going to stop. We've been doing this about 2 hours. You know, I hope everybody had a good time. We did a little hobby hangout. We talked about some different things. And again, I appreciate the big audience, man. You guys were great. I know Troll Trader's not in here anymore, but a big shout out to him for the follow or her, as the case may be, and everybody else that came with and stuck around. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I struggled, man. Yeah, it was, man. I did build a whole box of the Octarius terrain, so that was pretty cool. So that was nice. We got that done. Probably build another few boxes of it tomorrow, but I don't want to do that on stream every time I build and paint. So next week when we do a hobby, I'm gonna get back on doing hobby days on Mondays. So next Monday when we do hobby, I'll try to find something else to do. Maybe we'll work on some Castellans. So and then you know if something pops up in the conversation and somebody's like, hey, let's talk about this, then we'll stop and we'll talk about it. I'm all about that. So again, thanks a lot. Check out the Military Gaming Command link, see what they're about, and I appreciate it.